She left the living room and the family member followed behind my wife.
Susie asked the family member to leave. She would take the opportunity to target my wife. She felt my wife was the root cause of dissension in the family.
These folks that attack marriages, healthy marriages, it's because they have their own problems.
When she saw that I wasn't complying, she became angry and her eyes were like daggers. She threatened my job and dismissed me from the meeting.
What on earth is happening in this cult? What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Wake Up and Win podcast. We are your hosts, Blaise
And Christina.
Great to see you all this evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you're at, whatever time it is. We've got another story for you here. Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson. A lot of names there. But we so appreciate her work and just the way. I was telling Christina today, like when we were dealing with the IHOP Kansas City situation, which we still are, but especially in the early days, I remember that just like heat that I felt, that fire of just desire for the truth, especially knowing the people that were on stage, knowing the lies that were being perpetrated, knowing the truth about the matter and watching what was being lied about. It was like we had that energy just to like bulldoze it. And there's that power. And for me, it was being on staff there and in leadership there for like 4 years, knowing the behind the scenes gave that unction. Shout out to Rick Curry. But with Laura Lynn, I feel like she's got this thing because she came right out of the nest, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So we appreciate her work. And the letter that came in from Jonathan's cousin was sent to Laura Lynn, and she broke that story. Powerful letter. So we're going to go over that tonight. And any comments before we dive into the letter?
Well, yeah. First, I guess if you know around here, this is going to be about Daystar, which there's a huge scandal with multiple levels, multiple layers to this: spiritual abuse, child essay, everything you can think of. Pretty much, it's a hot mess over there.
Yeah,
and they're having people pull their programs all the time. I think they've lost like 16
people, 16 contracted programs left so far.
So there's a lot happening there. We've done a few videos on that when it was first breaking, when the Julie Royce article first came out. And then we actually interviewed Susie and Jonathan here. They came out here and we got to hang out with them. And so if you don't know what we're talking about, then you're probably going to want to watch that first. Yeah. I would say at least that interview. That's the one that we like went through the timeline and talked about everything. And the one thing I'll say about them is their story has been consistent. Their story's been consistent all the way through. And every time something new comes out, it just confirms it even more. And this letter is just like that. Point. I feel like reading this letter, you're like, oh, well, that's what Susie said happened to her. Oh, that's what John said happened to him. Like, it shows that this is not a like one-time issue. This is like a pattern.
That's a great point, babe.
It's a pattern. So, I just want people to know who haven't been paying attention, if we're like reading this and they're like, what is going on? What are you guys talking about? That you're going to want to go back and follow the Daystar stuff. And there's a lot more, even than what we've done. Like Blaise said, Laura Lynn, Tyler Thompson has been posting almost every single day. Yeah. You know, and the Unction has been posting a lot about it too. We really like both of them. So if you want even more details, you know, they've got,
she's interviewed
tons of people.
She interviewed Leonhardt or whatever, the forensic investigator involved. Like, this story goes deep. But yeah, if you want a basic overview, and I think it's a great thing to do because we just kind of assume everybody's watching, everybody knows what's going on. But we'll link to the interview we did with John and Susie. It's just the straight overview of everything from start to finish. Hopefully that's helpful for those of you new to the story. But again, like Christina said, I mean, it's true. When something comes out like this, you're going, I remember when I heard it, I went, oh my gosh, the chiropractor.
Yeah.
What? Are you kidding me? So for those that don't know, Susie Lamb was being worked on by this chiropractor, by the family chiropractor who had lost his license for things like this. But Marcus and Joni Lamb let him work on them in the green room, work on their family. She came out with her story that she had been essayed by this chiropractor and that they silently got rid of him, but still called her a liar about it, basically. And so the fact that this person tells the story about the chiropractor as well, you're just going, yeah, it's just wild.
It's a lot of confirmation, I think.
Yeah,
Before we dive in, though, I do want to say one more thing about, because you brought up IHOP KC and how we felt about that last year. I did see in the comments somebody was like, whenever we were talking about Sean Bowles, they're like, what about IHOP KC? What's going on? Like, what's happening? And what's happening with Mike Bickle? Well, we're just waiting. They are doing the investigation, the Firefly investigation, and it was supposed to come out in January, I believe, originally. I feel like I do remember them saying it was pushed back a couple weeks. I could have made that up. But I just want to say that is like happening right now. As soon as the investigation, the like report is released, we'll for sure cover it and talk about it. And, you know, but right now we're just kind of waiting for that to come out. So
the investigation was fully funded. Firefly is a third party investigator, and Tikkun, which is a Jewish ministry that is kind of connected to IHOP KC, took on the role of client to basically pay for the investigation through the crowdfunding that happened through a lot of you guys. And so there's that investigation happening. So as soon as we get the news,
we're not done talking about that. We're just kind of waiting for
There's
that.
not a lot we can do at this point with that. So, and there is other, I mean, once that comes out,
I think there'll be a lot to
there'll be a lot to talk about. And if it's lacking,
we'll talk about it.
There's names out there that we've had stories come to us. People are like, will you dig on this? Will you dig on this? So we're definitely by far not done talking about that. Because sadly, I think a lot of these guys are connected. Eric Voles is behind the scenes right now at Daystar. Guys, we have been talking about Eric Voles for over a year. We were drilling on Eric Voles last year. I'll link to a video but that's like the PR campaign that you're seeing at Daystar right now is what we watched unfold at IHOP Kansas City. Now they learned better. They learned from, or Eric learned from it not being the face.
Yeah, because he got dragged on social media. I'm sure he was like, okay, I'm never telling anybody who I'm working for again.
Yeah, exactly.
But
we all
gets around.
Yeah, it's the age of the internet. Like Doug Weiss and Joni Lamb said, it's the age of the internet where unanointed, uncalled people can share their stories. Unanointed, uncalled, and non-authority people can share their thoughts. Us 30 and 40-year-olds. Anyway, that was a clip that came out from Joni and Doug today.
Yeah, maybe we can show that one at the end or something.
Yeah.
All right, you want to dive into
this? Yeah, let's
letter?
dive in. Let's do it. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to let you read first.
Okay, so this letter was sent to Laura Lynn from Crazy. This is one of Joni's family members. This is her nephew, so that would be Jonathan's cousin.
This episode is brought to you by wakeupandwinp Insurance. We help clients all over the nation with their term life, whole life, or universal life insurance, and we're definitely happy to help you with a consultation.
Check the description below for more info. And also not just a family member, but an employee, ex-employee of Daystar, worked there for years. Our experience with Daystar Chiropractor. For years, we walked in quiet, seldom sharing our experience. This is not out of revenge. Is this page 1? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is not out of revenge. We could have done this a long time ago. We wanted peace for our family. For us to get back in, it feels like we are risking so much of the peace that we have fought so hard for. Our desire has been to walk in love and forgiveness while being obedient to the Lord. The decision to share our story has come after much prayer, and we believe is relevant in light of everything that has been revealed by Jonathan and Susie. I am Joni's nephew and Jonathan's cousin. I came to work at Daystar in 2015 and worked there until the spring of 2021. During my time there, the chiropractor would work on various family members and employees in the Daystar green room. I was warned by Joni that anytime he worked on one of the young women, another person should be present, usually the husband.
I got to pause it. Because what we heard Joni say about the chiropractor publicly, when all this came out about Susie, she said, he's a godly man. He's a good man. Or and I guess she told Laura Lynn Tyler that.
That he's a good man.
Yeah, he's a good man. Now, sadly, this man has passed away. I just mean sadly for his family, etc. But this man's passed away, so he can't speak up or tell his story in any way, shape, or form. But here's two pieces of information now about this man, and What's wild is that we know he lost his license for some type of situation like this in the past, but then he got saved. And so Marcus was like, well, we'll give you another shot. At my family.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's kind of wild. I wasn't too alarmed about this initially because that seems like a good idea for any adult male working on young women to have accountability present. So I was present anytime he worked on my wife. At first, this wasn't a problem. Later, however, the chiropractor started to voice irritation at my presence during my wife's adjustments. That's weird.
You imagine if I was in there with you and somebody's
working on my back, and then it's like,
man, I really wish you weren't here.
Yeah, I wonder what he said. I wonder what I would love to know, like, the exact line that he said, but that would be so uncomfortable. Yeah. During some adjustments, he would make multiple comments about my wife's body. Again, weird.
Super weird.
Then he texted me that he wanted to buy me and my wife dinner and said he wanted us to come swimming afterwards at his house. He told and texted me to remind me that he wanted my wife to be sure to bring her swimsuit. We were alarmed and concerned and alerted Joni. These incidents were prior to Susie's alleged abuse. So this guy, like...
He's a creeper.
Yeah, he's very creepy. Marketing to prayer experience from my wife's perspective. Do you want to read the wife's perspective? I'll read the husband's. You read the wife's.
Should I read it in a female voice?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Worked in marketing under Rachel for almost a year. The people who worked in marketing as a whole were very nice, but it was very tense and stressful when Rachel was around. It was not what I would consider a healthy work environment. It was similar to other people's testimonies, which if you've followed the story, many people have come out with their testimonies about working with Rachel Lamb Brown.
Which if you take one glance at her Twitter feed, I do not find that hard to believe.
Yeah. What's wild is as soon as Eric Voles got involved at Daystar, suddenly her Twitter feed her tone changed and she was speaking like a coherent person.
I don't remember that.
I do. Well, it was like around the same time.
Yeah.
Which made me go, did Eric Voles take over her Twitter feed?
Yeah.
Or X or whatever? Okay. My husband and I shared the work environment. The environment became increasingly more toxic. I scheduled a meeting with Rachel to respectfully share my concerns. In addition to the toxic work environment, she made fun of a close family member of mine a couple times in front of staff, and there was no accountability for her. So that's kind of an awkward situation for a boss to make fun of your family member. My husband and I share the work environment issues with Joni, which we were quickly shut down and accused of being judgmental. Things continue. That is so strange. Like, I've had people talk to me about the situation, had a pastor reach out to me, be like, hey, can you walk me through all this? And because I'm watching and da-da-da. And he's like, yeah, but in any normal work environment, if you get a card to read, you got to read the card. That's your job. You have to submit to your authority. I'm like, of course. I work in, he was like, even in secular. I'm like, I work in secular companies. I like led teams and all this stuff. It's, So this idea of, oh, they're just like a secular company. They run their company and it like a business. I'm like, yeah, they do, but it's not like a business. They run it like a business. Plus, they add this spiritual authority component. Plus, when you bring a concern to a boss, they don't say, oh, you're just being judgmental.
Yeah.
They go, oh, thank you for telling me about this. Let's see if it's legitimate and let's correct it. It's so strange. Okay, sorry. My husband and I shared the issues with Joni. We were shut down. We were told that we were being judgmental. Things continued to deteriorate and started to notice the effect that the stress was having on my body, so I decided to step down from marketing. After leaving marketing, I took some time and went back to school to work on my master's degree. While working towards that, I worked a heart for the world, and I loved getting to pray. I worked a heart for the world. I think that must be a...
Heart for the world. Hang on one second.
That's like
Heart for the world. Was that the...
like a ministry
fundraising thing?
It must be. That must be what it is. Yeah.
I remember reading that.
So people call in, and I loved getting to pray for and encourage those that would call in with God's word. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The week-long televised fundraiser,
which is the thing that
they're not doing. This
canceled it.
This says, let's see, Daystar canceled their upcoming week-long televised fundraiser, Heart for the World.
This was a breaking thing that happened today.
Candy Shand shared this. This event, which used to be called a telethon and a share-a-thon, has been going on for decades, and it raises close to 90% of Daystar's donations. So my questions are, was the decision to cancel due to viewers' concerns about spending at the ministry, or because of the controversies? Did Daystar simply anticipate dismal returns? Interesting. So yeah, I guess she said this is the first time they've ever canceled it in decades. It says they've never canceled it.
So that's a great question from Candy. It's like they know that if they throw this thing up and are raising money right now, it probably won't look good in the midst of this, and you probably will get less money raised, and that won't look good either. And I'm sure every time they've done this, they've shown how much they've raised so far and all that stuff.
Well, and also what she was talking about, because what I said about layer upon layer upon layer about this whole Daystar thing is one of it is financial. One of it is how they spend donor funds.
True.
Which is, again, a story that you can find.
A whole nother story.
Yeah.
Said, I decided to try and see if I could get a job in the prayer department. This was an entry-level position. Whenever I applied for the job interview was with Joni, Jay, Susie's dad, and Jonathan. It seemed odd to me that Joni, the co-founder of Daystar, would sit in for a prayer partner job interview, as I don't think that was a normal protocol. The interview proceeded like any other interview at first, but then Joni asked Jonathan and Jay to leave, and it was just me and Joni. Joni then told me, the Lord loves a teachable heart. Susie has a teachable heart. I want you to have a teachable heart like Susie. She told me I was on a 3-month probation period, and her specific expectation was that I was to like and comment on Rachel Lamb Brown's social media posts, and was not supposed to tell Rachel or anyone.
That's so weird. There's so many weird things about that. Like, first of all...
Name a couple.
Okay. Well, first of all, comparing her to Susie. Like, that's so not cool.
Yeah.
To, like, make somebody feel like they need to be like somebody else. You know, you're almost, like, pitting them against each other.
Right.
So that's something that we see, like, in narcissistic leaders a lot, is trying to create, like, competition between people who would normally be, like, working well together, or friends or family, but you kind of make a divide in there.
Like siblings.
All of it. So that is, like, not cool at all.
Super weird.
And then also...
but also not just the weird part. So that is weird and that's wrong. That's odd. But it's also the fact that she said Susie has a teachable heart. And now you're going to, like, a few years later be like, she's the most rebellious. She's Jezebel, you know, send everybody, including Marcus Rogers, to, like, you know, be like, this is the worst woman in the world. Everybody knows she's it's like.
So she used to be the golden child that was the example that you used against other people. And now you're going to throw her under the bus and act like she's nuts or something. It's like, as soon as you like are out of their control, then,
they're Jezebel. They're rebellious.
Yeah. And I want to say something too, just because this word, we haven't ever talked about this, but saying this word teachable so much, not saying that that's like, yes, you should be teachable.
Yeah.
But also I feel like I have heard that way too many times by narcissistic leaders, which they don't really mean teachable. They mean like controllable.
Yeah. And sadly, the people that are the most teachable, the people that are mostly controlled are the most teachable, which means there's an element of humility and willingness to learn and follow. Like, that is something that is a good
quality.
It's a good quality. But it's a terrible combination when you have a narcissistic, controlling leader.
Yeah. So I guess I think it's important to recognize, if you are under any leadership, that constantly that's one of the main requirements or the main things is be teachable. That doesn't mean they're a bad person, and that doesn't mean that, like, being teachable is wrong. But just like
it's a red flag.
Just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on what that means, what their definition of teachable is, because I feel like that word is always in there, you know? So I just noticed that.
I know that we've been in this type of situation before with spiritual leaders, with like in job situations and different things where, like, we're the most moldable, the most teachable, the most like, okay, I just want to follow. I just want to do what's right. And then you get put in situations where you're like, wait, do I actually want to be like this person? Sometimes you got to look at the person that you're that you're following or whatever, and be like, do I want to emulate these qualities? And what is the fruit of their life and the outcome of their life? And what are the qualities that they're calling me to emulate and be teachable about? And then go, okay, maybe they're very spiritual. Maybe I think they're spiritual, or maybe I think all these things about them, but let's just look at the fruit of their life. Do I want that in mind? And sometimes you've got to make the decision to, it's not about not being humble or not being teachable. It's about deciding to have courage as well, and self-agency, and knowing that God is with you and in you and can lead you by his Holy Spirit. And you don't have to just say yes, 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 yes to everything, you know. And it's hard to see it sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially if you're like being mentored by somebody, or like you said, I think that was a good example. Like, you want to do the right thing. You want to do what's right. So you want to be teachable. But as soon as that, you get that like gut check of like, I don't think this is right.
One good sign is whenever people closest to you say, you're changing.
Yeah.
And in some senses, people could be like, well, that's a good thing, because you want to grow, you're leaving them behind, etc. Like, you know, in the world of like business, entrepreneurial, social media, they'd be like, yeah, sometimes you're changing, you're growing. And people are like, you're changed. It's like, well, yeah, of course I'm changing, I'm growing. You know, it's
I'm
like,
growing. You're staying the same.
Like, peace out, bro.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying don't grow, don't change. I'm just saying that it's a red flag with the people you trust the most and truly want to do life with. Start to say, hey, you're changing, or the relationship with this narcissistic leader or spiritual abuser or spiritual person in your life is causing you to have conflict in the most important relationships of your life. That is a red flag.
Yeah.
Because that leader's not going to be there when that other relationship falls apart. That leader will probably be out of your life and cause you to lose the people that would have been in your life for years to come. So let's keep reading. I'm going to get you to dive in and read.
That night, I liked and commented on one of Rachel's social media posts. Joni texted me and said that Rachel had asked her if she had talked to me about liking her social media post. Joni in text said no to Rachel, but in reality, she had talked to me about it. I was conflicted, but I wanted to have a teachable heart, so I was trying to please Joni. I thought she, being a ministry leader, would know what the Lord loved, and she told me the Lord loved the teachable heart, so I wanted to please the Lord. So basically, this is not the first time we've heard of Joni lying and asking other people to lie. In the Royce report with Susie talking about being mentored by Joni, she said that she would meet her for coffee privately, but didn't want other people to know because they didn't want them to be jealous. So she would tell them that she was getting her nails done.
Right.
She lied about what she was doing and wanted Susie to also.
Right.
So the fact that she did this here too is like no surprise.
It feels like it's just a normal thing for her to lie about stuff.
It's just life. It's like it doesn't matter.
Just small things. It's like whatever.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But it's also just hilarious that she wanted her to like and comment on Rachel's post.
Oh, it's super weird. And then that Rachel reached out. Mom, did you tell her to like? It's like, so clearly Mom has done this before.
Yeah. Or they'd have conversations about like, oh, she doesn't even like me. She doesn't like any of my posts. I mean, this is an assumption,
that makes
obviously.
Sense. That makes sense.
This is like my assumption, opinion, just trying to like figure out why she would even tell her to do that. Like, oh, maybe like not getting along great, which she did say that, I mean, they worked together and she wasn't easy to work for. So she probably didn't like all of her posts and wasn't like, oh, you're so awesome all the time.
Right.
So there was probably like kind of aware of there being a little bit of tension or something and wanted her to do it. And so whenever it happened, Rachel's probably like, why is she liking my post? I know she doesn't like this. Mom?
That makes sense.
Did you tell her to do this?
And then she saw the text. So the cousin saw the text from Joni to Rachel saying, no, I didn't tell her to. And then the cousin's like, wait, okay, so I want to be teachable. So I guess there's a good reason to tell her that, not tell her the truth. It's very...
That's the bummer too, is that Joni is telling her, don't tell her I told you to do this. You know? So it's like putting her in a very, very uncomfortable position where she has to like compromise her own convictions.
Yeah.
All right. Meetings with Joni. We had a family member who my wife, okay, so we're back to the husband's perspective. We had a family member who my wife and I were concerned about and tried to distance ourselves from them. This family member in reference is not Pete, okay? So we're not talking about the same guy, but this is a different family
And for
member.
those that are new to the story, which most of you probably are not, but Pete is the alleged perpetrator of the abuse, okay, the original abuse story. And so they're saying this is not Pete. This story is not like corroborating evidence against Pete at all. This is about something different. But I would say it's corroborating evidence about the way they handle
about the culture there,
these types
about how they handle
of dudes.
Yeah.
And it's not
Terrible.
cool. Yeah.
We noticed some behavior from this family member that was concerning. The more time we spent, the more uncomfortable we became. We didn't feel comfortable spending time around this family member, and we felt like the Lord was warning us to separate ourselves from them. When we distanced ourselves by not spending as much time around them, it caused quite a stir in the family. Joni took this as an opportunity to get involved. Me and my wife tried to back away very quietly and didn't want to cause any problems. Joni would call me into private meetings to discuss the issue, sometimes alone, sometimes with other people. Most of the time, I had limited warning, having to leave my desk at work to attend them. I worked in the accounting department at Daystar. At first, I thought she wanted to help, but the longer these meetings went on, I realized that wasn't the case. All right, when we raised the issues of some of the comments that this family member had made, i.e. such as off-the-cuff comment to my expecting wife with our first child that we were excited about, if you want an abortion, I know a guy. I just can't even believe that's so strange, such a strange thing to say to a woman who's pregnant with their first child, to anybody ever, but like you're at a Christian ministry. It's like people don't even talk like that. Like people who aren't Christians and don't say stupid stuff like that. Like who does that? You have to be like demented or something.
Something's
like,
odd.
Something's
off.
Something's off for you to say that to a pregnant woman.
Yeah.
It's not funny. That's not like, in no world is that funny.
Then it goes on to say, and then also a joke about torture inflicted by piranhas being funny, and an instance where they responded to a telemarketer by joking that they would be right back, only after having sex with a goat. Okay, so my wife and I started feeling uncomfortable, well, clearly, with this person who's a family member of the Lambs. Uncomfortable with this person being around our baby. In these meetings, I shared this with Joni, and she responded that some Christians have different senses of humor. Okay. We felt this was not a sense of humor issue, but something was very wrong. Well, yeah, clearly. These comments plus this family member's interest in being around diaper changes, that's weird.
That's weird.
When we would go into separate room, began to concern me more and more. This happened multiple times in growing frequency. One instance at Joni's lake house, our child needed a diaper change, so my wife told me I need to change our child's diaper. I'll be back. She left the living room, and the family member followed behind my wife and went into our bedroom across the house near the entrance. Susie noticed the family member follow my wife, so she followed and asked what this family member was doing when he went into our bedroom while my wife was preparing to change the child's diaper. Susie said, "What are you doing?" Susie.
I'm so glad she did that.
I know, she's such a boss. The family member lingered, and Susie asked the family member to leave. The final straw was during a family movie night.
Well, pause right there. Even that part, Susie asked the family member to leave. So like
they lingered. They just sat there.
They hung out, and Susie, like, how awkward. Susie had to ask them to leave, which we don't know what family member this is, and we don't know exactly how Susie did that. But you can imagine that would be like pretty weird and pretty uncomfortable and pretty awkward. But I'm so like thankful that Susie did that. And it also shows you like Susie's aware of what's going on. And this is part of the reason too why I think whenever all this other stuff came out, the new Pete allegations with Susie and Jonathan's child, they were acting like Susie does this. Susie makes a big deal about stuff. She made a big deal about the chiropractor. And we didn't even know this story. But
no, we didn't.
She made a big deal about this. But you know why she did? Because it was a big deal.
Yes.
You don't follow moms around when they're changing their kid's diaper. You don't hang out and watch if you're like...
And you don't follow children upstairs when they're going alone to change clothes, Pete. Mm-hmm. You don't... And someone that is a... discerning mother notices this. Mm-hmm. And the reason why she didn't follow Pete up the stairs is because, and it all makes sense now, because she said they wouldn't believe me. I knew the Lamb family wouldn't believe me if I followed him up there and said, hey, he followed my child into the room. So she went and told Jonathan. Why would they not believe her? Because she does this kind of thing. She says, hey, this person, including this guy.
It really makes me wonder, as this is all coming out, do you know, nobody knows, I don't know, how many stories Susie and Jonathan must have that they're holding back? Because they could have used this to, like, as part of their story, to be like, Susie saw this too and confronted this, this is how Daystar is, this is how Joni handles things. They did, but they didn't. They held it back because it wasn't their story, it was theirs. And I don't know how it came about that, well, I guess we do. They said that they saw Susie and Jonathan, sharing their story, and they wanted to step in. We had to step in. But I'm just saying, how many of these are there? How many stories like this are there that Susie and Jonathan could have thrown out there and could have shared to corroborate their story? Because it sounds exactly the same.
So yeah, like Marcus Rogers, like the one who knows everything on all sides, the only one on the planet who knows everything from all sides. Did you know this, Marcus? Did you know this? Did you have this secret file in your phone and know this whole story? You knew it all as well? Like, you know everything, apparently. You're the one that God has ordained to cast the correct judgment on this whole situation, and every other person knows nothing. And, did you know this? Clearly not. There's a bigger story that's gone on over the years with the cover-up culture of this, and I'm just going to say it, this cult, the cover-up culture of this cultish environment where a family is not allowed to buck against or ask questions or point out things to the parents. They're not allowed to do that, or they're told they're rebellious, or they're they're Jezebel. So people in the family aren't allowed to challenge Joni, and weren't allowed to. I mean, mainly I'm just seeing Joni. I mean, I guess with Marcus, you kind of had the same situation where he said, Pete's innocent.
Yeah.
Hallelujah, Pete's innocent. But Marcus had his own issues. So anyway, I think that, there's a culture and a pattern that is established over the years that, again, I just have to address one more thing about the Marcus Rogers situation, because he said he wasn't going to speak about this anymore, but he keeps speaking about it. He said, I'm not going to touch it anymore. And he keeps speaking about it. He can't help himself to say, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the only one. The level of self-delusion and lack of self-awareness is astounding that you would say that, first and foremost. But lastly on this is that there's a pattern. So when Marcus Rogers says, oh, all the men of God I know say this about Susie, do all the men of God that you know that she had to follow men around to keep them from watching their kids get their diapers changed over the years? Did all the men of God that you know out there know that Susie had to be on guard in this family? Otherwise, she would get when they confront about inappropriate jokes about abortion or about sex with animals, like when they confront about that, it's just downplayed. Is that the way? Maybe Marcus Rogers, last thing I'm going to say on this guy, maybe that's why you felt like this was the Christian Illuminati, that Joni wouldn't look you in the eye when you went to the Trump meeting. Maybe that's why you felt that. But now you're under the spell because you went and showed up there and you're under it. But I'll just say that there is a pattern that's been going on that's much bigger, and more whistleblowers are going to continue to come out because courage begets more courage. Let's keep talking.
Yes. And on that same note of courage begets courage, this couple probably, as far as we know, left Daystar feeling isolated and even kind of broke relationship with Jonathan and Susie. Not that they broke the relationship, but just that they, didn't.
The situation causes it.
Yeah. So they had no idea. They were out there alone thinking it was just them. So then whenever they heard Susie and Jonathan's story too. So that's the other, just the power of telling your story.
Well, oh yeah. It's the power of telling your story. It's also the power of keeping people silent.
True. Yes.
It's the power of keeping people silent, and the power of cease and desist letters. It's the power of a ministry that has a net worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars of donor funds. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, mind you, they probably did some real estate and some things like that to do whatever, however, with the money they got. Hundreds of millions of dollars. The legal fear that they put in the hearts of people that leave with the ability to just say, well, if they speak out, we could be in big trouble. Not only that, but you lose your peace. You lose peace of mind. You're just trying to live your life. Like they said, we've just been trying to live our life in forgiveness and love. And now and so many victims of these type of things do that, understandably. And then suddenly when you hear a story, you're like, oh no, there's more people that this is happening to. We've all got to come together and we've got to tell our story to put a stop to these abusers, these spiritual abusers, and these people that use their spiritual power to cover up for worse, which would be SA. All right, keep going, babe.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, the family member lingered and Susie asked the family member to leave. The final straw was during a family movie night. We had our child sleeping in a pack and play in a separate room while we were watching a movie. Then this particular family member got up and went in the direction of that room, which I thought was odd. I got up and followed behind them to the room, and the family member was sitting in the dark with the lights off on the couch beside the pack and play where my child was sleeping just 5 feet away. I questioned them, asking why they were in there. The family member didn't know what to say. I told him to get out of the room and not to go in there if my child is sleeping. When we brought up this last event, we were told by this family that that room was their safe place, and that is why they wanted to go in there. However, this family member had his own room upstairs. Due to this incident and the odd and strange explanation from the family, we started to distance ourselves from them. We felt our concerns were not being taken seriously, so with a great amount of caution, we decided to protect our child and limit interactions and access with this family member. Due to this, we started receiving pressure from Joni stating we were dividing the family.
Look at this. Look at this. Now, this reminds me of dividing the family. This reminds me of when Jonathan started and his brother-in-law started bringing the accusation or just the allegations about Pete, and then Marcus Lamb was saying, first of all, Marcus Lamb said, well, he's cleared by the forensic investigator. He is innocent. And as a son, he went, I guess I need to trust my dad and the forensic investigator. This is odd. This doesn't make sense, but okay. So then the next thing was, I know your relationship is strained, but as the leader, as the future leader of Daystar, it's your job to overlook things and keep the family together. So isolating and manipulating and then teaching them to just overlook so that you can keep the family unit or keep the organizational structure. And so that's the whole idea, is this pressure to say like, oh, you're not hanging out? You're ruining things. You're breaking things. So they like break down your boundaries. They don't allow you to have boundaries. You want to have boundaries, and they don't allow you to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Messed up.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna let you keep reading.
It was after this, Joni started to hold meetings where she would call me in and I shared my concerns. She would take the opportunity to target my wife. She felt my wife was the root cause of dissension in the family when we chose to distance ourselves.
It's exactly what she's doing to Jonathan about
Yes.
Susie. The same tactic. Do you see this?
Yes.
Keep going.
We chose to distance ourselves, and she would try to convince me that my wife was controlling and manipulating me, that I had no reason to be concerned regarding this family member, and instead that I should stand up to my wife. I expressed that I'm in complete agreement with my wife concerning the red flags regarding the family member. While trying to convince me that my wife is being manipulative, Joni would tell me, you need to use wisdom with what you share with your wife. Okay, first of all, why is Joni a woman hater? I do not get it. I do not get it. Like, it is so messed up that she makes everything out to be the wife's fault. But I think it's because she wants to be the queen in charge of every single person. Yeah. And you can't only control
the men if she can get their wives out of the picture.
Exactly. Or if she can get their wives in line.
Yeah, that's true.
So with Susie at that time, she was teachable. So she had gotten Susie in line so she could, be in control. But this one, she didn't. And then eventually she didn't with Susie either. And that's whenever she just like turned her back.
That's wild.
But it's crazy that that's the go-to to be like, oh, your wife's manipulative. It's like literally projection. This is projection because obviously Joni is the one that wants to be in control and is manipulating everyone in this story.
We saw this We saw this at the church we went to for 5 years.
Yes.
The Garden of Greenville. We saw this exact thing. And we have a 3-hour podcast about that with Armando and Shayla, and a 1.5-hour podcast with Micah and Lindsay. We literally saw the same tactic. To Armando, Chad Norris and his cohorts would say, Shayla has the Jezebel spirit. Shayla, you need to, get her in line. Get her in line. Get her in line. Micah to Lindsay, same thing. And they told him, don't talk about what we're talking about here. Don't tell Lindsay these things. Don't talk to Lindsay about what you're going through here at church.
It is this goal to divide healthy marriages. And it's so weird. It's like you want to separate them and have them isolated so that you can control them. Yeah. And it is the target is healthy marriages. They will go after, or marriages in general. Don't have to be healthy ones, but they want to separate. They want to pit you against each other. And then
when it doesn't work out, they say it's your fault.
Yeah.
When the marriage doesn't work out, or there's problems in the marriage, they say it's your fault. It's the wife's fault.
But and the other wild things is she said, you need to use wisdom with what you share with your wife. So I'm telling you guys, if you're interested at all about spiritual abuse, you have to hear Micah and Lindsay's story too, because this is what Micah was a pastor at our church. He wasn't the lead pastor, but he was one of the pastors. Yeah. And he was going through spiritual abuse pretty much the whole time we were there. Yeah. And we didn't know because we all honored the pastor. And so we didn't even talk about it, even though we were close friends with them. But we talk about this in our podcast with them. And he was told to go to counseling, which we're about to read. So he went to counseling every week. And they said to him, don't talk to Lindsay, who is his wife. Don't talk to her about this. Don't talk to her about anything we talk about. She doesn't need to know. It's like that is the biggest red flag of your life. If your counselor, pastor, mentor, anybody is telling you not to tell your spouse something, that's so messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're in an abusive relationship and there's
sure,
there's reasons if you're trying to whatever. But normal life, that is your person. That is who you tell everything to. And anybody that has said something different than that has
it's the same motives. It's the same spirit, the same personality disorder, the same whatever you want to call it, narcissism. You want to call it a controlling spirit. You want to call it whatever. But it is dangerous. And if you see the signs of this in your life, your church, your mentorship, whatever you're going through, run.
Yeah, I was going to say
run. Get out
ever
fast,
tells you,
fast.
Don't tell your wife about
it's
this.
You're not going to get cursed. You're not going to DIE. You're not going to get sick because those are all the things these people
you come out from under the covering.
Yeah, you come out from the covering. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, it happened to them. Look what happened to them. Look what happened to them. Run. Because the most important thing, if you're married, the most important thing in your life, unless you're married to a literal physical abuser or something like that, then that's a different issue. But if you're married, the most important relationship besides you and the Lord is you and your spouse. It is a sacrament to the Lord, in my opinion. It is powerful. And it's the thing that these type of ministries, for some reason, they want to divide. And just my opinion, you look at the history of Marcus and Joni Lamb, they have massive problems. He was cheating on her for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And yes, I get they say he repented and all this, but he was caught. Come on, he was caught, honestly. I get it. He's passed away, but he was caught. And so you can only be so repentant when you're caught. You kind of have to repent. Or else, they didn't step down from ministry. They should have stepped down at that time. Mm-hmm. So I think in some ways these folks that attack marriages, healthy marriages, is because they have their own problems. Mm-hmm. And they don't like to see people with healthy marriage. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
But it's evil. It's really evil. All right. You can keep reading.
I didn't think that was right, as my wife and I are one, and I believe we should never keep any information or secrets from the other. She would bring up other husbands in the family, citing them as good examples for getting their wives in line, and that I should do the same.
Wow.
Joni tried pressuring me into going to a counselor over the issue, but only the counselor she wanted. At first, I agreed. Right after agreeing to counseling, I began to receive phone calls from various family members who were very upset at us, especially at my wife. They expressed nearly identical wording as Joni had, and I began to suspect that Joni was privately having conversations with them. I believed their issues with us were not organic, but sparked and stoked like a flame by Joni. I now had to out fires with the other relatives. It felt like a coordinated pressure campaign, so I decided to let Joni know I would not attend counseling. Going to counseling felt like a trap, and I did not have peace about going after she isolated us from the family by these coordinated attacks. She was absolutely livid, telling me I was double-minded and not a man of my word.
Listen to this. Listen to this. So when you're not going to be controlled anymore, then they use scripture against you. You're a double-minded man. You said you would go to counseling. No, it's called getting more information and making a decision based off of new information.
Yeah.
It's like, you said you were going to go to counseling because you realize that you have problems. You realize you need to, it's like, problems with what? Because I don't want to hang out with someone in the family that acts in ways that is like creepy. Those actions tell me that person probably had prior bad things that they've done. And if that person is still living, they need to be outed. And if they're not, then God have mercy on their soul. But those actions that family member was taking were really, really bad signs. And when you notice those signs, here's my problem right now. Here's my problem with this whole thing is Jonathan and Susie notice these things. Jonathan and Susie noticed these actions, these types of patterns by Pete. JW and Rebecca noticed these patterns by Pete, would not let Pete around their child. I have a feeling that's probably still the case.
Yeah.
But they won't speak up. But they will eventually, I hope, I pray. Jonathan and Susie, or this couple here, noticed that other family member. In all situations where there's a person that's doing these creepy things, who are the people that get the fingers pointed at them? Not the creepy person. The people that are trying to like avoid the creepy person.
Yeah.
I don't know. People's like personalities are just different. Some Christians just have funny senses of humor. Well, don't I have agency to decide who I'm going to hang out with and have my family around? Oh yeah, but you have issues because you won't hang around the family. So you're going to go to counseling because you like, what on earth is happening in this cult environment is what it feels like. If you don't do things the right way, you got to go. If you don't hang around with the family, I'm going to pull you out of your job every day, have an hour-long talk or many days a week or whatever, however often, and then force you into counseling. That's wild, babe.
Yeah, and I do want to say, too, just to, like, parents, if you have weird feelings about somebody, like...
You're probably right.
If you're probably right, but even if you're wrong... it's worth losing that relationship.
That's
right. To
right.
me, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's the same thing about like sleepovers.
Yeah.
Like we don't do overnight sleepovers. Our kids don't do overnight sleepovers. And
people probably give us hate for that.
Probably will. I
don't
mean,
care.
Yeah, it'll probably be weird. Or think we're weird or offend somebody whenever they like have friends that want to spend, they're not going to, it's not going to happen. They don't do sleepovers, and that might hurt somebody's feelings, or somebody might think that's fair, or think that's not fair, or think that we think like something bad about them. But it doesn't matter because I can't care about other people's feelings. I can't care about other people's judgments when it comes to my kids.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one time to change the course of their life forever.
Yeah.
So I just feel like parents should never be shamed for being aware of who's around their kids, especially when their kids are being changed.
Mind-blowing.
If anybody gives you weird vibes, then like...
yeah. Just... yeah,
it doesn't mean you have to like go at them in front of them and be like, I feel weird about you. But be
like,
aware.
Hey, step out of the room, please.
Yeah.
Remember that time we were traveling when our kid was like 1. Our first child was 1. And we were traveling and we were at like this coffee shop in the middle of podunk nowhere. And like this old dude is literally the only guy in the coffee shop, and he's like the only worker and it was like very strange. We had to like change her diaper and there wasn't a bathroom.
There wasn't. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think we asked him if there was a bathroom
He's
or
like,
something.
oh, you can go use that room right there.
Yeah, you can go use that room to change our daughter's diaper when she was a baby. So we're like, okay,
hey, we were
so we
new
go
at this
in
too.
there.
I mean, now we can just like hold the kid with one leg and like it's changed all of a sudden, you know.
Yeah. Do it while we're driving.
We're like, let's get this, you know, and make sure that like, you know, poop doesn't get everywhere. But literally we go back there. Next thing we know, the guy walks back there and sits down.
Walks in there and tries to talk about, where are you guys
just
from?
chit-chatting.
And I was like, okay, this is weird. And then Blaise just said, he's like, Can we have some privacy? We're changing our baby.
I was just like, my blood was boiling. I was like, is this guy like a freaking creeper? Sorry to offend those. I've literally had people say, don't say the word
Creeper?
No, freak.
Oh.
But,
What is freak? How is that bad?
I don't know. But
tell us in the comments. I'd love to know.
well, it's just like I don't know.
Bad word?
I mean, freaking or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, that's different than calling somebody a freak, I think.
Well, yeah, no, I said freaking creeper.
Oh.
I'll edit it
I wasn't
out.
listening.
I probably won't. Anyway, you weren't listening? How dare you? That's what happens when it's my turn to talk. She's just, I'm kidding. But yeah, my blood was boiling. I was like, hey, we're going to change our daughter's diaper. Can you give us some privacy? And he was like, oh, well, of course. I mean, of course.
But he already knew that.
Oh, he got
still
all
walked in there.
weird, though. Like, all weird, kind of like, how dare you think I'm like a creeper? And
yeah,
wanna
like
see your
offended by
daughter
us
get
or
changed.
something.
I'm like, yeah, just get on back to your barista little situation, which, no offense to baristas. I was one for like a year, you know.
I love baristas.
They're great. She married one. I still make the coffee most of the time. But anyway, yeah, that's my point. It's like, will you notice something? Just call it out. Just get on with yourself. You go.
You will never regret that.
You won't.
You will never regret standing up for your children. You will never regret getting space from a creeper, even if they're a family member.
Yep.
But you will regret if anything ever happens to your kids.
Yep. John Deloney, guy I really like. He's got a podcast. I don't remember what it's called. I think Deloney Show or something. But he says that same thing. People call in and tell him the craziest stories. But he's like, I've sat with too many people that tell me stories about when they were kids, and I've walked through too much heartbreak with these people there's too much there for me to say, oh yeah, just don't worry about it. He says, now I say, go with your gut every time. You will never regret it.
Yeah.
And if you go overboard, who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it could be devastating. I think we're on the last page here. I'm gonna let you keep reading. You're doing a good job.
Okay. Think I'm doing a good job?
Yeah, you're a good reader. You read well. You have a good voice, reading voice.
Oh, thank you.
You have a good speaking voice. You just have a good voice. Will you sing the rest of this, actually?
All right. Let's see. Where was I, though? At the top of the page?
Yeah.
In that meeting, Joni told me that I had no choice but to go to her counselor. I told her that isn't right, that you can't just force someone to go to counseling against their will.
It's their
South
will.
Carolina. Joni said, you will go because it is affecting your work performance.
Of course.
I respect, which is
That's exactly what she said about Jonathan.
Yeah, his work performance.
Ding, 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 ding.
It's how you get out of
ding,
all
ding,
of the
ding,
spiritual
ding, ding.
abuse is you make it about
work.
Even though it's not
you own
true.
their paycheck. So Joni's whole thing is, well, we put him on a PIP, performance and review, whatever, like for 15 months. And we asked Jonathan, you can go watch the interview with Jonathan and Susie on our channel. We asked Jonathan, were you getting met with consistently by your manager about the PIP, the performance plan? And he said, no, I never was met with about the performance plan. I was met with once, hey, we're going to put you on this plan. And then he was met with again, like 12 or 15 months later, you're fired. Because he didn't fall in line with reading the cards and praising the marriage that he felt convicted was wrong. And not continuing to look at Pete as a possible threat. Keep going.
I respectfully responded, it has not, and that about his work performance, affecting his work performance. I respectfully responded, it has not, and that a personal matter of not wanting to spend time around another family member is not grounds for being forced into counseling by an employer. She abruptly ended the meeting. 2 hours later, while on my lunch break, I was called into another meeting. This time, when I walked in, she had my boss in there. I always have had a great relationship with my boss, and she tried to use him to persuade me to submit to her. A good old submit word. Submit. He was in a rock and a hard place, being asked to share with me the importance. Well, you never know.
You never know. It might have been in a rock.
Being asked to share with me the importance of family and listening to elders. She never asked him about my work performance in front of me, leading me to believe that she asked him before I came in, and he answered not to her liking.
Well, I'm sure because she said to him prior, she said, it's affecting your work. And he said, no, it's not. Then he brings the boss in, and she's like, well, can we say it's affecting his work? He's like, no, he's working great. He's doing a great job. Well, let's tell him about being a better family member. Can you tell him how he should respect elders? What a joke.
I had one final meeting with Joni. During this meeting, she switched her tune, being very friendly. She would tell me about the future plans she had for me, that one day I would help Jonathan run Daystar as his right-hand man. This is something she has expressed to me multiple times in my years in Texas, but money and positional authority isn't what motivates me. So this is another thing like to be aware of is future faking.
Yeah.
And somebody promising you these things or pretending like you're going to be something big in the future if you just stick it out, if you just stay with them and trust them and submit to them, then you are going to be like
You'll
this
just
great
pass
thing.
The test.
So
pass the test.
he
Pass
would
the
be,
next test.
Yeah, exactly.
Obey, submit, don't rebel, be teachable. Someday soon you'll get this. Oh, and eventually you'll run it with Jonathan. You'll be the right hand man. He's like, and that's what's so cool about this guy. He's just like, I didn't have that desire. Everybody has a desire to grow and succeed, but like the motivation of this man being in ministry at Daystar was not, I'm going to climb the ladder and be the main guy. He's like, well, if that's what the Lord has for me, great, but it's not going to make me put my child in jeopardy, nor is it going to make me pretend.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, or go to counseling for issues I don't have. That's what's so crazy is these people putting you in if you are in a church staff position and you're going through counseling because you're forced to by your pastor, you really need to figure out why they're putting you in there. And it better not be things like rebellion or you need to be more teachable or you need more healing. It's like, get to the crux of the matter. Why do you want me in this? And what does it really have to do with? And if it's intangible, run. Like, don't do it because we saw it literally at the garden. They put these people in counseling with the Thorntons and then
share information.
She shared the information with the elders from private counseling sessions.
Yeah. Which I'm sure Joni would love to have like notes
all
from
the
all the counseling sessions.
She may.
And she would be their boss. So they would need to submit to her and tell them that. So that's what happened at our church. We saw it happen to our friends.
Crazy.
So yeah, it's.
And guys, one thing too is when you're in a church like this or a community like this, you can still be impacted by the Spirit of the Lord in a positive way. So people be like, well, that sounds crazy. Well, we were there for 5 years and we didn't know any of this was going on. We didn't know because we weren't behind the scenes. I had rubbed shoulders with the pastor some, met with him some, but I never experienced this intense. We were next on the list.
Yeah.
Come to find out. But we had not experienced this to that level. So we didn't know. So our lives were being impacted. Our kids were being impacted. Everything's good. But when all the dirt came out from what was happening in the core leadership group, the core 20 people, all the spiritual abuse, we were like, y'all are doing this to our best friends?
Yeah.
Y'all are messing with their lives and marriages and putting them in situations where they're losing out on, like, they're letting go of their calling. They're like, it's mind blowing how often these people will tell you to lay down things, lay it down, die to it, lay it while they continue to get more power because they're controlling your life.
Yeah.
It's
wild.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, I think we're at this time when I walked in. She had my boss. She never asked working performance in front of me. Okay, I had one final meeting. You read.
Oh yeah, wait. I already said that the authority isn't what motivates me. I believe if God wanted it to happen, it would. But regardless, I should be content with whatever my lot in life is. Joni tried to convince me to spend time with that family member at least once a month. That's another thing. I got to stop stopping because we need to finish this. But to force someone to spend time.
This is what Marcus Lamb did to Jonathan. He was like, you need to. And this is what, speaking of Marcus's, this is what Marcus Rogers thinks he has on Jonathan and Susie, is that they continued to spend time with Pete and his wife. They continued to say nice things about him in text messages and this, that, and the other. It's like, that is because their dad told them that this is what you have to do. Like, so anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's very messed up. If you suspect someone is sketchy or abusive or somebody makes you uncomfortable, then
just run.
Then your leader or mentor or boss shouldn't force you to spend time with them. That's
as though it's your issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, just to differentiate, the difference between Jonathan and Susie Lamb and this couple right here, their cousins, is that there was leaders in their life that told them that there had been some type of legal action, a forensic investigator that had cleared Pete With this couple, there was things that they noticed, but there was never any like forced counseling for this other family member. So they're just like freaked out. They're like, let's run. Let's head for the hills. With Jonathan and Susie, they're like, oh, he was cleared. They were lied to about that. So I can understand the conflict of going, well, he's creepy. But then, oh, well, legally or in some ways he's cleared. So I guess we're forced now to do this or be around him every now and again or whatever.
Okay, so she wanted him to spend time with that family member once a month. I told her I didn't feel like that's what the Lord wanted me to do. When she saw that I wasn't complying, she became angry, and her eyes were like daggers. She threatened my job and dismissed me from the meeting. We are so thankful we didn't back down despite the intimidation and threats, that we held our convictions from the Lord because we believed our child would have been in great danger. If we had listened to Joni and compromised our convictions, we believe we would have jeopardized the safety of our child. As a result of holding our ground, we were berated for not participating in family events. Over the course of our final few months in Texas, my wife and I sought God very, very much, giving much time to prayer, checking our hearts often because we wanted to be pleasing to the Lord. We didn't want to take any missteps and sin before God. We hated the drama and just wanted to raise our newborn child in peace, praying to God that he would please give us a release to move away from Dallas and Daystar. After my job was threatened, we felt that release, that we could finally leave. We left Daystar and moved away, even without a job, and had to trust God to be our provider. I felt it more important to protect my child and family than to risk staying at Daystar. For years, we kept much of our experience to ourselves. We felt God impressed upon us not to share, but rather walk in forgiveness and focus on raising our family. We were essentially cut off from the Texas family, and it wasn't until after we saw what happened with Jonathan and Susie that we realized we weren't alone. It is only now that we feel that we had no other choice than to come forward. We felt a conviction from the Lord after hearing about the alleged abuse of Jonathan and Susie's daughter that we couldn't stand on the sidelines after experiencing for ourselves intense persecution while trying to protect our child.
Wow. Well, there you have it. Thank you guys for speaking up to Jonathan and Susie's cousin and that family. Thank you for speaking up. We appreciate it. Any final thoughts?
Gosh.
Kind of hit a lot of things in there.
Yeah,
we already kind of gave our thoughts all the way through, but
yeah, just thank you for sharing your story. And I think there is more. I just saw that, I haven't listened to it yet, but Julie Royce just released a new podcast with, I think it was Joni Marcus's assistant for years, who I haven't listened to yet, so I don't know what she says, but looks like it's another one that like confirms everything about the way Daystar works, the way Joni operates, their leadership style, and it's just not looking great for Daystar.
It's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. And all they can do is try to bring new people on to confirm that they're, in the right or whatever, just by saying that people are gossiping, or all they can do is threaten with letters to YouTubers and things like that. But I'll tell you, courage begets courage, and it's a lot of little people. And this is not cancel culture. It's not cancel culture. It's literally trying to hold ministers of the gospel accountable to what the word actually says. Holding these people accountable. The book of Jude, he says, I was looking forward to writing to you about the gospel, the good news of our shared inheritance in Christ, but instead I was compelled to write to you to stand firm for the truth of the gospel and call out false teachers. And he goes on in the whole book to call out false teachers. So these aren't cancel, like all these YouTubers that are covering these things, it's not cancel culture. It's literally, it would be much better to talk about the gospel and great news. But right now, we literally have to call these false teachers out and call them to account to see change. It sounds like our daughter's having a little coffee fit. Coughing. Not a coffee fit, but a coughing fit. So
yeah, our kids are still recovering. I think I said the last one. We thought they were better. Kind of are, and then Ella Jean's not.
Pray for our kiddos, having a little cough, so we're going to go take care of her. All right, God bless you guys. We love you all. Thanks, and continue to pray for this situation. Everyone involved. Peace out.
Bye.